Ohana means family, and family means nobody should be left behind. Proposition says that for us children, out of sight cannot be out of mind. We are so proud to propose. Our stance is that we prefer adult children taking in elderly parents rather than supporting them to live separately. Elderly parents and adult children refer to the time frame where children are grown and probably working, while parents may already have been retired or maybe in their 50s or 60s. In our world, adult children will accept elderly parents into their homes to care for them. This looks like a family home where elderly parents stay together in the same house, in the same space. They eat meals together on the same dining table, they watch television together on the same couch after dinner, they share the same experiences and have the same house. In the days when adult children are off to work, for example, elderly parents can go about their daily lives too, enjoying their own activities and participating in things that they want to do. For elderly parents to live separately on a position means children paying for them to stay in a home elsewhere, which may even be outside of town because it's cheaper, and children often live near to the city where property prices are much higher in order to find work. No thank you. Elderly parents who are less mobile or may need medical care, for example, may be sent to nursing homes that exist in these countries. Recognize that this debate takes place under a context of a rapidly aging population all around the developed world, where increasingly services for elderly like nursing homes, for example, are overburdened. And know that this debate can only happen if adult children have to choose between both options. So obviously, the child must be willing to care for the parent and not abusive or not negligent of the parent. My first argument will be on how on our side we avoid emotional neglect, and my second argument will be on bettering elderly care. My second speaker will talk about strengthening familial bonds. First argument on avoiding emotional neglect. And the thesis of this argument is that a world in which adult children live with their elderly parents facilitates greater emotional bonding, no thank you, between both parties. Premise: elderly parents care greatly about their children. I think this is pretty obvious. Which parent doesn't love their children, the children they spend their entire life supporting and raising? This is especially so for moms and dads who give up their entire life dreams, their careers, their aspirations to change their kids' diapers, to take them to school, to prepare their meals. They sacrifice so much for the adult children in the past just to be with them every step of the way. The problem in the counterfactual of opposition is that these relationships are often strained when both parties live apart for two reasons. The first is distance. When your parent lives in an entirely different state or very long distance far off in a distant neighborhood, there is no proximity to have shared experiences, which is important for the relationship to be maintained. It is very hard to have meals together, to go out shopping together, to bring your parents to the movies. That is when you don't form emotional connections because your lives are just so separate. The second reason is because when your parent is out of sight, no thank you, it is when they begin to become out of mind. And of course, I'm not saying that all adult children are irresponsible and try to shrug off their parents. But what I am saying is that when your parent is distant, it is very easy to make the excuse, well, I really wanted to go and visit them, but I have this very important errand I need to run. I can always go back next Christmas anyway, it's not that big a deal. That is the world of opposition, no thank you. One where physical distance begins to become emotional distance. An entire generation of parents lose such an important familial bond. What does the side, on our side, what does the world look like? It looks like adult children returning home to eat dinner with their parents, talk about what happened during the day, joke about what occurred in the local news. And often, it is these small things that spark joy in the hearts of every parent. To be able to hear your adult children pulling into the driveway after a day at work, to hear the laughters of your grandchildren at home. This is something so valuable to humanity that we need to protect. If opposition wants to talk about the flexibility for elderly parents, the best way is giving them the choice and the ability to build an emotional connection with their children when they live in the same home. Recognize that the notion, for a moment, of a good life is never built on just financial or material fulfillment. What makes us human is our emotions, our ability to love and see what we have poured our hearts and souls into. But before I move on to my second argument about how we better elderly care for these individuals, yes?
Don't you think that the harms of neglect are not exclusive on our side? Because they may have good intentions in the beginning, but once they get busy with their jobs and their children, you can still have neglect on your side, but it happens within the same home, and that's much worse.
Thank you, madam. I don't think so. When you live in the same house as your parent, that's when you facilitate communication. That's when you're able to talk to your parents, to rationalize it out. Because you live in such close confinement, you can't risk getting into a conflict with your parent. You're more likely to talk it out with your parent. As compared to when your parent is living far off away, and when a conflict arises, you can just ignore them, and not listen to them, or not talk to them, not visit them. That is from this world of opposition, where conflicts are more likely to happen and more likely to fester in the long run and go unresolved. Second argument on bettering elderly care. And the thesis of this argument is that a world where adult children live with elderly parents allows greater care for their parents. There's a spectrum of elderly parents in status quo. Some may be perfectly fit and healthy. They get to enjoy their freedom, they can go about doing their own activities and things. But for some, they may be frail and may even be suffering from dementia in worst cases. And this is often the later years of their parents' lives that we want children to be there with them every step of the way, to give emotional care as well as physical care that this argument will prove. Often, a lot of children send parents to nursing homes. In Singapore, where we come from, many individuals often send their parents over to Johor Bahru in Malaysia across the causeway, where there's a lot of nursing homes there because they don't want to take care of their children, their parents, because they just don't know how to handle the medical expenses or the medical care. There are three problems with this in the world of opposition where this takes place. The first is that nursing homes are often very cramped because aging populations, especially in the developed world, means that there are a lot of elderly parents in these nursing homes. Often, staff are short-handed, infrastructure is overburdened because there's just so many elderly parents in these nursing homes. The second reason is because in these nursing homes, there is no guarantee that your parent will be safe or that the staff will be accountable, because there's often a huge information asymmetry where workers have a huge amount of power over their elderly, no thank you, because the elderly are highly dependent on them in the nursing home and there is no emotional bond between the workers and the elderly parent. The third reason is because often nursing homes are very expensive. And that is when children begin to conflate money with love. It's unfortunate, but they think that just because I pay, no thank you, for the elderly parents staying in the nursing home, then it is sufficient in order to fulfill my responsibility as child to the parent. What is the counterfactual? In our world, when children live with their parents, this is far better for a few reasons. The first is because often children are able to give expert, tailored care because you know your parents' quirks, you know your parents' demands, for example. Because you've interacted with them across your life, you know what they want and what they dislike, what they're more likely to favor in terms of care, for example. The second reason is because you're able to free up more financial resources when you don't have to rent a flat for your parent in some other neighborhood. But all you have to do is just carve out one room in your existing house for them. That is when you have a lot more money, for example, to hire a 24/7 nurse to stay at home to take care of your parents. This is when you're able to buy specialized machinery to put in your house in order to facilitate the sort of illnesses that your parents may experience. It is on our side, when you have more money, because all you need to do is live under the same home, you have one property, you don't have to finance two properties, and that becomes a lot cheaper and you're more able to buy better medical care for your parents. But the last reason is because the care becomes more consistent. When your parents are sick and you can stay home and take care of them. And often it is easier to get leave when you are getting leave to care for your parents in the same state or in the same home as compared to taking leave and taking a few days trip to another state all across America, for example, where your parent might leave. It is often very easy, it's much easier on our side in the counterfactual for people to then take time off work, for example, to care for these parents at home. On our side, we believe that Ohana means family and family means nobody should be left behind. We propose.
The speaker spoke for 8 minutes, 8 seconds, 8:08. I thank the first opposition speaker and now would like to recognize the first opposition speaker to open the opposition.
It's nice for them to paint this very beautiful world where children just absolutely love their parents. They're going to take care of them, they're going to watch movies with them, they're going to go eat with them, and they're going to be so loving to their parents. But the main flaw within their case was to prove why this was going to happen. They never proved why children had the inherent incentive to take care of their parents, to actually make their parents have an extremely good life, and why they're likely to do so. We tell you that counterfactual is that when you're an old parent and you have to be shouted at by your children constantly, Prop will tell you to stay in that side. On opposition, we stand for the empowerment of the elderly. We're very proud to oppose. 2 points I've set up in today's debate. First of all, we would have the children pay for all the expenses. If Prop has enough money to support them in their own homes, I think that we can also funnel the same kind of money towards supporting retirement homes and community homes. This debate shouldn't operate on a basis in which nobody has money to pay for anything. Second of all, we tell you that the children who are so good on their side of the house, let's buy into their characterization, will still be good on our side of the house. They're still likely to visit their parents, they're still likely to support their parents, and take extremely good care.
Point of information.
We're going to forward 3 arguments though. Thank you in today's debate. First of all, why we better care for the elderly. Second of all, why you get better parent-child relationships. And my second speaker will bring a substantive on how you get better elderly lives for disenfranchised communities. And before that, 3 points of rebuttal. The first point of rebuttal is their idea that relationships, no thank you, will be strained because of distance, right? I think they were very vague here because I have two responses. First of all, I don't think distance is a huge factor, right? It takes literally like 30 minutes to drive from your house probably to your retirement home. These aren't like so far away, and I don't think it's such a huge burden, no thank you, to drive to these places and take your parents out. But second of all, this is even more likely, and the reason why this was quite contradictory to their case was because they portrayed these children as such good people. They portrayed these children as people who love their parents, who want to go to the mall with their parents. If they were willing to put that kind of effort, no thank you, into their parents, I'd like to characterize that these are children who are likely to do the exact same thing. They're likely to visit their parents. But second point of rebuttal, they told us that children will be nice and care for their parents. No thank you, and unlike their side, I'm going to provide to you two substantial reasons as to why children wouldn't be as nice as they like to talk on. First of all, they're going to be overburdened by their parents and they're most likely going to be tired. Why? Because when their parents are at their home every day, no thank you, nagging them about certain things and asking them to do things, for example, how they dress, for example, how they raise their children up, we think that those kind of things overburden these children and they get very tired. So, and that's the first reason as to why these children wouldn't be very nice to their parents. But secondly, we tell them that the parents need to meet these children need to meet the constant demands of their parents. This looks like having to dress in a certain way or listen to their parents' demands. We think that children will be overburdened and very tired. We don't think you should buy into their characterization on how children will be so nice to their parents. But the third point of rebuttal is on their weird idea that nursing homes and retirement homes don't work. First of all, I think this is an alternative world debate in which on our side we're envisioning a new world. So we're perfectly fine allocating more funding towards building better retirement homes, catering to more people, hiring more staff, ensuring that they're better people. And we think that the political push on our side will be there because there's a lot of old people going to those homes. Before I continue to my two argumentations, sure.
If you claim that parents are such a burden, why would children even want to support their parents on your side?
Because they're not living in the same place, I think on your side they have to meet the children constantly and face the constant demands. So I don't think that point of information makes sense. So first point, argumentation on why we take care of the elderly better. So I think let's just take them at their best here and assume that these children are very nice. These children are very good. Why is this still problematic? For two reasons. First of all, parents have enormous expectations of their children, and when these children aren't able to fulfill that expectation, they're probably going to be distressed. Why is this so? Because parents, like they want to characterize, no thank you, spend so much time and money and effort into these children, and therefore if they're staying in the same home, they're likely to expect their children to make those returns on that investment and keep on having these expectations and obligations from these children. We feel that that's very harmful because empirically speaking, there will be a time when these children aren't able to fulfill that obligation. I don't think children are able to fulfill every single obligation. If they want to take that point, they have to prove to you why children are able to do that. This looks like parents needing their child to listen to them, and we think that on their side of the house, these small instances eventually overburden their parents and emotionally drain them. But the second point here is on the time that these children spend with their parents. I think they were very convenient to say, oh, we can watch TV, we can go eat, we can go to the mall together, because the real characterization here is that these are working class citizens. They're probably going to work and they aren't able to spend time with their parents. And no, this was important because the majority of these individuals, these parents, spend their time alone and isolated on their side of the house. We think it's comparatively better on our side. The moment they're in these kind of retirement homes, they have other people to talk to and there's other people to socialize with. But an even more important part on the idea of time is how you spend the time. On their side of the house, when you go home from work, you're likely to be tired, right? No, thank you. And when you're tired, you're more likely to not be interested in taking care of your parents. You're likely to be snap at your parents because empirically speaking, these children aren't likely to be super nice every single time, right? There's probably going to be that one time where they're tired and they snap at their parents. So we think those kind of instances where they get mad at their parents are far more harmful. You don't get a proper way of spending time on their side of the house. On our side of the house, the time you spend is far better. Why? Because when you go and visit your parents, you actively choose to do so. This means you're in a good mood, for example. You're likely to do things such as treasure that time more because you actively choose to spend time with your parents. Furthermore, parents also cherish the time in which these children actually visit them, right? On their side of the house, these these parents meet their children every day, they're likely to continue having these obligations. On our side, parents only visit their children like once or twice if these children visit their parents, and they're likely to treasure that time, so you get a mutually beneficial time on our side of the house. This is important because even if Prop wants to say that, oh, these people might only meet once or twice, we think that small instances which you can cherish and small instances which you have a good time are far more important towards parents than having a lot of time together and not actually spending good time with them. So I think those two problems deal with their characterization on even if these children are nice, there are two problems which they face. So why are parents better on our side of the house? First, we told you how they have a community, they can information around them, no thank you. Second of all, we told that they're able to have personal actualizations because they're able to do what they want instead of continuously thinking about their children and taking care of them. On their side of the house, the moment you look at your children every single day, that's all you think about. You can't always think about yourself. We tell you on the point of personal actualization, that falls to us. But third of all, this directly clashes with our idea on professionals being bad. I think professionals are actually trained in retirement homes, so you get better caretaking, for example, knowing how to take medication or providing an ability for their parents to actually have a good life. On your side of the house, there's still going to be a minority of cases in which children are abusive. We think it's far more harmful than on your side comparatively to retirement homes because children have a psychological bond and that harms parents. So second argument then on why you get better parent-child relationships. The first thing to note is that you cherish the time that you actually have because these parents have limited time with their children. They know in the future they'll have to leave, so they're likely to invest more, spend more time, and care for these children. Secondly, we tell you that this is far better because children feel that their parents care about them, so they're likely to visit them more or love their parents more because their parents also spent more time when they were younger. We tell them the benefits that we brought you are magnified on this point alone because the children feel that their parents care about them, they're likely to visit them more and love them more. But third of all, we tell them that they're going to be able to connect on an individual level because you remember the good times and you don't take your parents for granted because they're always there. You remember and cherish the good times you have together. So I think on the idea of parent-child relationships, we win that point. But on the more important clash on who gets better parent lives for these parents, we massively win in today's debate. Proud to lose.
The speaker spoke for 8 minutes, 13 seconds. 813. I thank the first opposition speaker and now would like to invite the second opposition speaker.
So in the dying moments of first opposition, you probably heard something about how you'll be able to remember the good times with your parents in the past. That's very problematic, because your parents want to know about you now. Every time I come back from a debate and my mother asks me repeatedly, how did it happen? What happened there? I think often the reason as to why it's important is because these relationships are built up not just by isolated examples of as and when you show up, but the small moments that happen over a long period of time. The kinds of bonding that happens don't just happen when you show up once a year for Christmas or once a year for Chinese New Year, but they show up because you live with them. They show up because you know and they know what you want, and it shows up and it understands because you cherish your parents. Note that this debate can only happen if adult children had to choose between both options. So obviously on both sides of the house, the parent of the child is equally caring about their parent. What Team Indonesia refuses to give to you in this debate is structural analysis that from first proposition we gave to you about how we A, increase the amount of emotional well-being because you now remember your parents and see them more often, and B, increase the amount of economic funds that you actually had in order to look after your parent. So two questions in this speech. First on emotional health, and second on physical well-being. I'm going to spend less time on the second contention, but I'd like to point out that I spent very little time rebutting Matthew's analysis about how you're better able to take care of your parent because you have specialized care. The first thing I want to point out is why do parents want to live with their children? And they attempted to dispute this characterization. I actually think that the reason as to why many parents want to live with their children is because many parents see their children as extensions of themselves. Often they want to be able to see what their children are doing because they care very deeply about their children, they want to be able to bond with them. But also, I think when they describe and say that it's a 30-minute drive, I think that first of all, that minimizes significantly the issue that states today. So for example, in many places around the world, many elderly parents choose to live in rural areas, and like children tend to live in the cities. The reason as to why this is important is because of the fact that it's not just a 30-minute drive away. But moreover to that, I think even if it was a 30-minute drive, there's a massive problem because the time spent could have been spent, say, finishing your last project at work. And often, because people have a current present bias, they want to finish the thing that they're doing now over the possibility of spending time with their parents because it's out of sight, out of mind. So to be very clear, you care more about your parent because you're able to see them actively. Which means that when they ask you how your day was, it's almost impossible for you to walk away from what they're doing. The main response that we get to this analysis is, you will be angry because your parent teaches you and tells you how to dress. Okay, the first response to this argument is, I think most parents generally know that their children are grown up and treat them that way, and they know that their child is able to make decisions on their own. And the second and more crucial point in this argument is, it's harder to ignore familial tension on our side of the house when you actually have to live with them. When you're living with your parent, that means you're more likely to resolve the familial dispute in the first place. Because of this reason, you're significantly more likely to care about your parent. Because if you're going to live with your parent, you're going to want to talk to them and at least settle the differences out. Whereas on their side of the house, the one disagreement that likely to happen, not just about how you dress, but even things about how you work or what you do for your living, is still going to fester, and that's when you're never likely to see your parent because you just don't want to talk to them about this particular issue. So to be very clear, the comparative is, most parents want to see their children, they get emotional happiness from seeing their children, and more crucially, if there are conflicts, they are better solved on our side of the house. So for all of these reasons, so thank you sir, we think that parents are significantly more happy on our side of the house. The next thing that they said was these are working class citizens, so we don't need to care about them because they never come home. That's not true. I think even for working class citizens, there are many issues that they care about that are important to them, but also, because of the fact that they have to come home, even small moments like eating dinner with your family or talking to your parents after you come home are moments that tend to build up over time, which means that you care about them. Like, I didn't love my parents the moment I was born, but because it was 17 years of raising me that I began to care about them. The fact that I lived in their house and they looked after each and after my every single need. That's how relationships are built, not just by like suddenly coming out and caring about something, like they say on their side of the house. This moves on to my second question on physical well-being. I'll take you now actually.
So you have the burden, if you want to run that argument, to prove why children will be nice every single time. What we told you is there will be a time in which they snap, and that's going to ruin the familial relationship and be more emotionally distressful for their parents.
What we explained to you is that your child is going to snap. We'd rather you have it on our side of the house because you're able to talk to them about it, rather than on your side of the house where the parent just never gets to talk to their child at all. Moving on. Second question on physical well-being. Here I'd like to point out that they dropped the entirety of Matthew's second speaker argument, the second argument. And the reason as to why they dropped all of this is probably because they did not know how to deal with it. This is very important. If we can prove to you that elderly care is made better on our side of the house, we significantly increase this and we significantly increase the well-being of the elderly. Moreover, I would point out there's a spectrum of elderly. Not all elderly are completely immobile, as they would like to say on their side of the house. Some are pretty mobile as well, which means they don't need a 24/7 attention. I'd also like to point out that Matthew's argument gives you more reasons as to why you tend to have more funds on our side of the house to do things like care for your parents or have a 24/7 nurse, because nursing homes are generally incredibly expensive on our side on their side of the house. Because of an increasingly aging population where nursing homes often can't keep up, that often means that it's significantly more expensive to send your parent to a nursing home with significantly lower quality of care. You get more quality and more help on our side of the house. This moves me on to my team's third and final contention on why we strengthen family ties in the family unit. The thesis of this argument is that helping the elderly at home helps to closen familial bonds and benefits the family. The context of this argument is really important. In the modern economic age, it's often a necessity that both parents at home work. Recognize that there's a spectrum of people, the spectrum of how this works. So for example, once your kids are slightly younger, your parents tend to be a bit more mobile. They tend to be, for example, more able to look after your parents. Once your children, say, grow up to become teenagers, that's when your parents begin to grow old. And the reason as to why this is important is because it explains to you why it's not going to be a situation in which someone who's unable to look after a kid is looking after one. Here's a good example of this. When I was younger, my grandfather used to be able to play football with me. Now as I've grown up, that is something that's unable to happen. But that's okay, because I spend a significantly important and increasingly amount of time with him. This solves two core problems. The first is on the prevention of latchkey children. Often, when both parents are busy working, having a lack of a parent or a support structure can be increasingly damaging for a child because there's no one there to monitor their kid, to look after the emotional well-being or the needs of their child. And this is important because often it involves teaching important, crucial facts about your culture. A good example of this is that my mother's side of the family is Indonesian. However, if my grandmother had never come home, I would have never been able to learn Indonesian and connect with the rest of my mother's side of the family. All of these things are reasons as to why often having these grandparents at home is a crucial cultural connection that allows you to bond with your family, but also gives you a sense of purpose and culture in your place in the world. The second way in which we benefit is often helping women in patriarchal societies. And we recognize that in a patriarchal society, it's probably true that a wife will be made to stay at home to be a homemaker. But I think it's crucial to recognize that often there's implicit sexism that exists. That means that when it's time, for example, for one parent to quit their job, the parent that happens to be making less is the woman. And that often means that they have to give up their job. But when they don't give up their job, there's a crucial problem. That when the parent is an elderly parent, is not at home looking after your kid for you, that's when women often have to come home and do a second shift, making it increasingly burdensome for them to look after their children, to cook, to clean, to do the washing. All of these things are things that can be done and alleviated on our side of the house, helping all members of the family, helping more families live in a harmonious manner. We believe that families should not be left behind. We're very proud to propose.
The speaker spoke for 8 minutes 16 seconds, 8:16. I thank the second opposition speaker, and now I'd like to recognize the second opposition speaker.
We do recognize that these kinds of children, they start off with good intent and they actually want to care for their parents and give them the most angelic life and spend time like watch TV and popcorn like they want to talk about. But what happens in the long term is what they fail to engage with. Because we clearly gave you analysis on how good incentives does not mean that it actually leads to good outcomes. Why? Because most often the case is when you spend so much time with another individual, you lose the kind of connections that you have with them because you spend so much time with them. You notice more of their flaws, and you always complain about these kinds of parents, and it destroys the kind of emotional connection with these kinds of parents. Comparatively, on our side of the house, the reason why emotional connection is much better is because you still long to see your parents once you live separately from them. You remember that good memories that you had and the instances when you were a child where you played soccer with your parents, for instance, when you played baseball with your parents. These are the kinds of memories that children hold on to under our side of the house. That's the incentive that they have to look for parents in the future when they don't live with their parents. I think that we win on this kind of point. No, thank you. But note that all of their arguments on alternatives like giving nursing homes and other types of alternatives to help parents is not exclusive. The only type of real tangible benefit towards their case is emotional connection with these kinds of parents, right? And if I can show you on why emotional connection does not happen under their side of the house and gets farther deteriorated, they literally have no case at all. 3 things I want to talk about in my speech. First of all, the emotional connection with these parents. Second of all, I'm going to talk about the quality of life between these kinds of parents, elderly care like they want to talk about. And lastly, I'm going to extend on why we better the elderly lives in disenfranchised communities. So firstly, let's look at the idea of emotional connection. They said that there's going to be a long distance and that it's like basically you can't meet your parents, right? First of all, no. They have to engage really in the types of children that we're talking about today. We concede that both sides of the house has some sort of responsibility that children recognize to their parents. But what is the extent of that responsibility? We question that. They wanted to bring this argument playing in their best case on how it's angelic children who wants to call their parents every day. Most likely, on our side of the house, the moment they live separately, those things can happen. Most likely, these children still want to call their parents every day because they love their parents so much. Most likely, parents even have the initiative to contact their children if their bond is so strong. So we don't think that that kind of exclusivity happens under their side of the house. But even if like parents, let's say children, let's say only want to see their parents on Christmas and they prolong it because of their own external excuses, that's not exclusive to their side. Why? Because in making excuses on why you can't see your parents are not exclusive because it's inherently based on each individual themselves. So most likely what happens under their side of the house, the moment they live together, those same excuses will still come up. But it's not the matter of a Christmas or Easter or not seeing your parents, but it's most likely, oh, I need to like, for example, work longer because I have a project that I'm doing. Or most likely, these kinds of people will say that, oh, I want to hang out with my friends in a certain restaurant and not come home to take care of their parents. Even if they're living in the same house, I don't think that their arguments stand at all. But second of all, they realize that there's other societal narratives that exist in the status quo. There's other societal structural narratives, like religious beliefs, for instance, or other types of like beliefs in the status quo and narratives that tell society that you have to respect your parents, you have to be familiar with your parents. These are incentive structures that children still have that they grow up with that will incentivize them to take care of their children. But you know, they brought in like this really cute story on how their mom asked about their debate, right? First of all, realize that that exists when you're a child and where parents are still very want to know about your personal life. But the difference is, under their side of the house, their second speaker is still a child. These kinds of children are still receptive towards their parents' question. They're never answered. Maybe when their second speaker has their own family, probably diverts the attention from themselves and from the mom to their own family, to their own co-workers, to their friends. That's the kind of burden that they need to understand under their
Information.
Parents do care about their children. They always want to question their children. The question is, as adult children, is it reciprocal? We tell you no. We brought that in our arguments on why these kinds of parents would be good because of a lot of the struggles and a lot of the occupations that children have. For instance, they're doing their work and their jobs, and these are the kinds of burden that these kinds of children have that doesn't get catered under their side of the house. So we don't think that emotional connection really stands under their side of the house, right? Second idea then on the quality of life for these kinds of parents. They wanted to say was, oh, when conflict comes when you live with your parents, it's easier to resolve emotional disputes. First of all, let's just look at the likelihood of conflict, right? Before you skip to like the resolution on how to fix the conflict. When you live together, every little thing can lead to an argument because most likely you will pay attention to like all the small flaws. That's why, for instance, a lot of couples, for instance, don't get arguments when they're dating, but when they're married, it can suddenly lead to divorce because they always constantly like look to the flaws of their significant other. So realize that their side of the house, living together is inherently already so bad. But second of all, let's look at this resolution, right? Precisely because it happens so much, you're normalized to the kinds of issues and the conflicts that happen. Most of the time, arguing will become the only way in which you communicate your angers and communicate your issues. Exactly because you like still see them eat, sleep, shower every day, you're most likely going to push it up and you're going to be much more harmful. So realize under their side of the house, resolution can only happen on our side because you feel uneasy when you don't meet your parents. Realize that you don't know how they're coping with this kind of issues. You feel worried when they have dementia, like they want to talk about. That is the moment you have a real urgency to contact your parents and visit your parents. Before I move on, sure.
Your parents have lived a long time with you and seen all your flaws, but would you have been closer to your parent if you lived apart from them?
No, realize that these children will still live like 18 years with their parents. I think that they still know their parents, and most likely the good memories that they have is exactly the emotional investment that parents give to their child when they're young. That is the kind of memories that children have under our side of the house, the moment you don't destroy that kind of perception when you like live together and conflicts arise. So that's why quality of life for these parents is much better. So extension now on why we better the lives of disenfranchised communities. So realize that poor communities are extremely tight-knit, right? This is because of like centralized poverty, and on top of that, the pressure and the normalization from society that you need to be filial towards your parents, right? Why is this harmful? You're more likely going to get poor people that even get more trapped in poverty and like in patriarchal societies that they want to talk about because they have to work so much jobs feeding their parents, and there's going to be a financial constraint. What you do under our side of the house is break them out of that intergenerational cycle of poverty. Why? Because firstly, poor adult children are no longer have that, they don't have that structural barrier that shows that they're bad children, and they're going to be relieved from that kind of burden that says they always have to take care of their parents and they always have to strengthen their parents. But second of all, because there's a huge demand from the poor that they don't live with their parents, most likely this will attract the attention from a lot of like politicians, for instance, and a lot of from the government to actually push and cater to policies that actually actually benefit these kinds of elderly people. So if you want to talk about elderly care, it far better happens under our side of the house. Because realize that the government does not want to be burdened with like a lot of poor people just living separately, and they're going to add in more burden from the government. So they're going to do things like create more pension benefits, for instance, or actually create and subsidize old people's homes, so their idea of nursing home being expensive does not actually happen. But also things like retirement bonuses, and this betters the life of these kinds of people comparatively, because we think that the poor individuals is what actually enables them to go into even more depths of poverty. So what did we show you in today's debate is, firstly, they can't just talk about emotional connection without proving on why that emotional connection is sustainable. But second of all, we also showed on why the lives of these elderly people and the children is going to be so much better in the future. So proud to oppose.
The speakers spoke for 8 minutes and 10 seconds, 8-1-0. I thank the second opposition speaker, and I would like to invite the third opposition speaker to conclude the proposition. Here, here.
As debaters from Singapore, we're often famously called emotionless robots. But even we are appalled by the world of the opposition. This is a world in which parents will never get to see their children for the reason that they wanted to enumerate as to why these children would never visit. On their side, yes, maybe good memories will exist, but these memories will never get to become a reality again. I want to point out the concessionary stance from opposition, because second speaker tried to co-opt our exclusive benefits when they realized they couldn't respond to it. They talked about visiting and calling every day. But by their logic, if you visit someone and call them every day, then the smaller time together won't be cherished. By their logic, then you will notice their flaws more. They can't have their cake and eat it in this debate. Either they ditch the entirety of their first speaker's case about cherishing shorter time more, or they try to co-opt our benefits. They cannot stand for both in this debate. I want to talk about two things. Firstly, better care for the elderly. Second, on better family structures. I'm going to spend less time on the second point, not because it's less important, but because the bulk of our material still stands. But first, on protecting elderly who are vulnerable. Under this clash, I'm going to talk about two things. First, the incentives, and second, the ability to have better care for the elderly. So first, on incentives. The one card in opposition's house of cards that it rests on is that children are very annoyed by their parents nagging them. That's what they use to justify why children will have good intentions at the start and eventually become bad for parents. So if I take this down, the bulk of the incentive analysis falls. We told you that yes, families fight sometimes, and that isn't just about living with someone. We think that if you visit and call on their side, surely parents can still do things like pick on your tire, for example. I'm not sure why it's an exclusive harm to our side. It's not an exclusive harm, but the benefit of resolution is exclusive. We told you that they were so much better on our side, they were so much worse on their side. When the resentment festers and when you live apart, it is never resolved. Second speaker said, you feel uneasy about fighting. No, but when you don't ever see your parents, why on earth would you feel uneasy? When you live together and you see how sad your parent is every time they're not talking to you, that's when you feel uneasy on our side. But then they try to say, oh, actually you only feel these things when you're a kid and never when you're an adult. I don't think so. I think when Garrett's an adult, he still wants his mom to check on him. We don't think there's an age limit to love in this debate. I don't think this is very spurious analysis from their side. But if anything, we think that individuals tend to be more rebellious because you're a child. You don't hear 30-year-olds complaining about their parents nagging. You hear teenagers like us nagging about their complaining about their parents nagging. We think that if anything, it gets better with age. The second analysis from them is that children are more overburdened. Here are two responses. First, we think that there's far more impersonal dependence on their side. Because instead of feeling like a part of the family, you get a check in the mail every month. That's when you feel more resentment. That's when you feel your parent is more dependent on you. Second, the ability to contribute to the household is significantly higher on our side, like taking care of the kids. And that's when you feel like these elderly parents are less of a burden in the household. But we also gave you two structural reasons from the top, as well the incentive to take care of the parents is more on our side. This is a heavy response to their argument on good intentions at the start. First, we told you that proximity incentivizes better care, and second, we prevent the mindset of out of sight, out of mind. Both explain in great detail Matthew's first argument, still no response from their side. I think those speakers a little too late. So this proves to you why even if they concede you have good intentions at the start, these intentions are to carry over to the future. So it will give incentive to have better care on our side. Second, on the ability to have better care. They say that you're working and therefore there's no time to spend with your parents. This is a strange argument because it rebuts your own case. That's probably a reason why you have no time to visit your parent. On our side, we need to always have time after work. So it's easier when your parent is right there at home. On the other side, even if at best it's a 30-minute drive to the nursing home, we think that's comparatively more difficult. And don't forget, nursing times have overhead hours too. If you work late, we think you're never going to be able to go to the nursing home on their side. But more importantly, we know that especially for low-income households, this directly addresses the second speaker substantive, resources are maximized on our side. 3 mechanisms that we still don't have a response to, even though we gave it to you in Matthew. First, we told you that it makes much more economic sense to live together. So buying a new 1-room flat is significantly more expensive than upgrading from a 3-room to a 4-room flat. Second mechanism, you decrease the need for caregivers. We think there can be a symbiotic relationship between the kids and grandparents on our side. Yes, both of them need help in certain ways, but they can contribute to each other. So my grandfather can drive me to school and I can arrange his medication for him. I can push my grandmother in a wheelchair around the park, and when we come back, she can help me with my mother tongue homework, for example. So instead of having one caregiver for kids, one caregiver for elderly on their side, because of this symbiotic relationship, you don't need a caregiver on our side. Better for low-income households. Third, we told you that elderly care was very expensive, and we gave you structural analysis in Matthew like an aging population and understaffed homes. Don't let them get away with this one line that we can make this better on our side. No, where did they get the logic to back this up? They can't just claim that they can make this better because there are structural factors that ensure this will never change. No, thank you. What have we proven here? We need that we have the incentive and the ability to have better care on our side. This manifests as both physical and emotional care. First, we told you about emotional neglect, and I don't think they've ever responded to why it's important. They said that, oh, you have better time spent because it's an active choice. Really? I don't think this is a particularly apt argument for their case. Our case isn't a policy that's forcing you to take in your parents. We just live in a world where we prefer people to voluntarily take in your parents. But moreover, I think we've proven that they will never make this active choice on their side. Second, the second response is that there's less time, so you cherish it more. We told you that meaningful connections are formed by constant shared experiences, because you must be able to relate and understand each other. Yes, you may cherish a shorter time, yes, but that does not mean that the entire relationship is better. On our side, we get much better understanding. Why is this important? Matthew tells you that the good life is about so much more than just subsistence. And moreover, that's why in many places in the world, like China for example, we have a legal requirement that not only the financial needs of the elderly must be taken care of, but the spiritual needs as well. We win on this. Second, on the metric they wanted to talk about, this manifests as better physical care. So for elderly who are unfortunately disabled, constant care is available on our side. Final rebuttal to the second speaker substantive. I've already taken this down by talking about low-income households, but here's a further response. We thought this was a spurious analysis about lifting the burden on low-income households.